Rain hammered the steel bridge when Amara Cole saw the blue and red lights flashing behind her. She eased her gray sedan to the shoulder, calm but alert. "You picked the wrong woman to harass tonight," she murmured, watching two officers step into the storm. Officer Reed's flashlight slashed across her face, license and registration. His tone carried the confidence of a man used to obedience. Lieutenant Frank Dalton followed, older, heavier, voice sharp. "Just a routine checkpoint," he said, though Amara noticed 3 cars ahead, all white drivers, waved through without delay. The banner above read, "Corridor Safety Initiative." Dalton studied her ID. "Eastbrook, huh?" explains the attitude. Amara met his eyes. "My neighborhood isn't a crime?" He smirked. "People from your side of town always think the rules don't apply." Rain pounded harder. Amara kept her tone steady. "Are you detaining me, Lieutenant?" "Hands on the hood." Dalton's voice cut through the night. Reed moved in, twisting her arm behind her back. Pain shot through her shoulder. The cuffs clamped tight, cutting skin. "Stop resisting," Reed barked. "I'm not resisting," she said evenly. "You're violating the Fourth Amendment." Dalton chuckled. "Another one quoting the Constitution." "You a lawyer?" Amara didn't reply. Her mind recorded everything. Badge numbers, the mole above Dalton's brow, the smell of gun oil on Reed's gloves. The body camera's red light blinked, then died. She felt the familiar surge of quiet anger. They were covering themselves, just like always. He shoved her toward the cruiser, forcing her head down. Her reflection flashed in the window, strong, calm, unbroken. They had no idea who she was. Not yet. Inside the car, fluorescent dashboard light flickered over her face. "You people never learn," Reed muttered. "My people?" "Eastbrook," he said. "We're keeping the streets clean." Her wrists throbbed, steel cutting deeper. The digital clock glowed 9 o'clock. Her watch vibrated once, recording, transmitting, locating. A faint pulse under the glass meant the Pentagon link was live. Dalton climbed in front. "You'll spend the night in holding," he said. "Might teach you respect." Respect wasn't what she lacked. Accountability was. She leaned against the seat, rainwater dripping down her hair, every drop cooling her fury. Outside, the city of Stonebridge blurred through the glass, divided, polished on one side, punished on the other. Dalton bragged about public safety and people who don't know their place. Reed laughed. Neither noticed the GPS pinging every 60 seconds from her watch. At the precinct, she'd ask for her single phone call. She already knew the number. Not a lawyer. Not family. When that voice from Washington answered, protocol would activate. 43 minutes until oversight. She remembered her uncle once telling her, "Justice moves slow until someone drags it into the light." Tonight, she was that someone. The cruiser turned toward Harbor Precinct. The rain eased, but tension thickened. Reed hummed to fill the silence. Dalton gripped the wheel too tight. Amara stared through the glass. Her wrists burned, yet her heart stayed steady. These men believed they were in control. They believed power was a uniform and a badge, but power, real power, was the truth recorded, the evidence gathered, the law she carried in her veins. As the station lights came into view, she allowed herself a small, quiet smile. They thought she was just another name from Eastbrook. They didn't know she was a federal investigator on assignment, or that every second of this encounter was streaming to a secure channel in Washington. Amara Cole straightened her shoulders, the cuffs biting her skin. Justice didn't always arrive with sirens. Sometimes it rode in silence, waiting for the storm to end. Fluorescent lights buzzed above the harbor precinct, flickering like nervous thoughts. Rain still streaked the windows, soft and steady. Officer Reed pushed Amara Cole forward, his grip firm, the cuffs cutting deeper. Lieutenant Dalton followed, smug and restless. The booking officer barely looked up from his computer. Name, Amara Cole. Address, 41 Westfield Avenue, Eastbrook. The man hesitated, tone changing. Eastbrook, huh? Figures. Reed chuckled from behind. They all say the same thing. I know my rights. Amara didn't answer. Her wrists burned, but her expression stayed calm. The scanner beeped as her fingerprints appeared on screen. Every word, every sound, every action was quietly recorded by the device hidden beneath her watch. The data streamed to a secure satellite relay hundreds of miles away. When the booking finished, she asked, I get my phone call? The officer pointed to the wall phone. One call. Make it count. Amara dialed a number from memory. The line clicked, and a measured voice answered. Defense Oversight Switchboard. Authorization Sierra Kilo 83, she said softly. Initiate Oversight Delta. Location Stonebridge Harbor Precinct. Confirmed, the voice replied. Response team en route. Timeline 43 minutes. She hung up as the door opened. Counselor Marcus Ellison walked in, suit gleaming, expression carved from arrogance. Lieutenant, he said, nodding to Dalton. Another checkpoint resistor? Yes, sir. Refused a search, started quoting amendments. Ellison's lips curved. They always do. The Corridor Safety Initiative can't function if every Eastbrook driver screams about rights. Amara met his gaze through the glass. That initiative violates the Constitution and your oath of office. Dalton smirked. You really don't know when to stop. Ellison stepped closer, eyes narrowing. I know your type. You think law is a shield, but out here we decide what's lawful. And when you're wrong, Amara asked quietly. He paused, thrown by her composure. Then we rewrite the rules. Reed grinned. Cell 2's open. They led her down a dim corridor, concrete sweating under the fluorescent glare. The air smelled of bleach and rain-soaked uniforms. You ever been locked up before? Reed asked. Not here, Amara said. But I've been in rooms that thought they could silence me. He laughed, but it sounded forced. You people talk too much. Inside the holding cell, the door clanged shut. Metal bench, cracked paint, faint graffiti. She sat straight, hands resting lightly in her lap. Across the hall, two officers whispered near the cooler. Counselor says the checkpoints are working. One muttered. Crime's down 20%. Because they're stopping everyone from Eastbrook, the other replied. Amara memorized the voices, the phrases, the smirk in their tone. Her watch vibrated once, confirmation signal received. 43 minutes until accountability arrived. Down the hall, Ellison spoke low to Dalton. She's nothing but a headline waiting to happen. Keep her overnight, right obstruction. Done, Dalton said. Body cams off, paperwork's clean. Ellison straightened his cufflinks. Good. The governor wants results, not complaints. In her cell, Amara watched the clock above the hallway door. 9:17. Time moving with purpose. Every breath now part of a larger equation. Her pulse slowed, trained calm. She thought of the families stopped nightly for nothing, of how fear had become procedure. Dalton appeared at the bars. Still quiet, Miss Cole? For now, she said. Good, he muttered. Quiet makes things simple. Amara lifted her eyes. Not for you. Something in her tone made him hesitate. He walked away, pretending not to hear the faint hum rising in the distance. Sirens, not local. Deeper. Heavier. Federal. Amara closed her eyes, listening to the sound grow closer. The system had taken its shot. Now it was her turn. 43 minutes until the storm reached the station. 2 hours earlier, the sun burned low over Stonebridge Harbor, turning the sky copper and the streets of Eastbrook to shadow. Amara Cole drove her gray sedan through familiar roads, past corner stores and faded murals that told the story of a neighborhood forgotten. She'd made this drive hundreds of times, from Eastbrook's cracked pavement to the manicured calm of North Bank. But tonight, she felt it. The shift in the air, heavy and expectant. Ahead, blue lights pulsed across the bridge. A police checkpoint blocked both lanes, cruisers angled like barricades. Amara slowed, rolling down her window. She'd done nothing wrong. This would take minutes. Officer Reed approached, flashlight beams slicing through the dusk. License and registration. She handed them over. Of course, officer. What's this checkpoint for? Routine ID verification. He scanned her license, pausing at her address. Eastbrook? His tone sharpened. Speaking into his radio, he said, Unit 3. I've got a subject from Eastbrook, requesting additional verification. Amara's grip tightened on the steering wheel. Is there a problem with my identification? Stay in the car, he said, turning away. Through her side mirror, she saw him whisper to another officer. They laughed. Moments later, Lieutenant Frank Dalton stepped from a larger cruiser, tall, confident, the kind of man who saw authority as armor. Step out of the vehicle, ma'am. Amara frowned. Why? My documents are valid. Enhanced search protocol, he said curtly. Step out. Enhanced searches require reasonable suspicion, she replied evenly. What's yours? Dalton's smile was thin. Attitude. Her voice stayed calm. That's not a lawful reason. Hands on the hood, he ordered. I decline consent to search my vehicle without cause, she said. Reed snorted. Look at this one. Knows the law. I know my Fourth Amendment rights, Amara said. Dalton's eyes darkened. Your kind always wants to make things difficult. My kind? Troublemakers, he said, though both knew what he meant. White drivers passed through easily. A black man in a delivery van was ordered aside. Amara memorized every badge number, every smirk. Last chance, Dalton warned. Consent to search or face obstruction. I respectfully decline and request a supervisor. Dalton's smile faded. I'm the supervisor. Reed, detain her. Reed grabbed her arm, twisting it behind her back. Pain flashed through her shoulder. Stop resisting, he yelled. I'm complying under protest, she said clearly, making sure the camera heard it. Dalton stepped closer. You don't tell us how to do our jobs. Then the red light on Reed's body camera flickered and went dark. Your camera seems to have stopped recording, Amara said. Mind your business, Reed muttered, tightening the cuffs. Amara could have fought back. She knew exactly how. But this wasn't about survival. It was about exposure. I'll be filing a complaint, she said. Dalton laughed. Send it to Counselor Ellison. He loves hearing from Eastbrook. Her watch pressed against her wrist. One subtle tap activated the transmitter. Every word streamed to a secure line hundreds of miles away. Search the car, Dalton ordered. An officer called. Nothing, sir. Check again. These Eastbrook people always hide something. Still nothing. Dalton sighed. Fine. Obstruction it is. Reed locked the cuffs tighter. Amara Cole, you're under arrest for resisting a lawful search. She winced, but held her gaze steady. You're making a mistake. Dalton smirked. We'll see. They shoved her toward the cruiser. Through the windshield, she saw a woman in another car raise her phone to record. Amara gave the smallest nod. The red record light blinked alive. As the rain returned and the cruiser door slammed shut, Amara looked ahead. Every insult, every shove, they'd just given her the proof she needed. The fluorescent light in the interrogation room buzzed like a trapped insect, flickering against the metal walls. Amara Cole sat at the steel table, wrists cuffed, posture straight, face unreadable. Her skin burned where the cuffs had rubbed raw, but her composure didn't waver. 2 hours had passed since her arrest at the checkpoint. The clock above the door ticked louder than the rain outside. Lieutenant Frank Dalton entered, folder in hand, carrying the confidence of a man who mistook intimidation for authority. He dropped the file in front of her. Comfortable? Amara's tone was even. Do I look comfortable? He smirked. Most people in your position start apologizing by now. Makes life easier. I don't apologize for asking why I was stopped, she replied. Dalton circled her slowly, boots echoing on the tile. Amara Cole, Eastbrook address. No record. Surprising. Usually we pick up your kind for smaller stuff first. She lifted her eyes to him. My kind? Troublemakers, he said, pretending innocence. You mean citizens who know their rights? She countered. Dalton's jaw tightened. You think quoting the Constitution makes you special? It makes me informed. He leaned closer, breath sour. We keep the city safe. You people make it harder every day. Safety built on fear isn't safety, Amara said quietly. It's control. Before he could answer, the door opened. Detective Elena Navarro stepped inside, early 30s, sharp eyes, calm voice. Lieutenant, she said, you started without counsel? Dalton turned, annoyed. She didn't ask for one. Navarro looked directly at Amara. Did you? Yes, Amara replied. Then this is a Miranda violation, Navarro said firmly. Dalton's smirk faltered. We're just talking. After a request for counsel, talking counts as interrogation, Navarro said. Procedure matters. Not every rule applies to everyone, Dalton muttered. It does to me, she said. Silence filled the room. Dalton finally grabbed the folder and left, slamming the door. Navarro exhaled and sat across from Amara. You handled that well, she said softly. I've handled worse, Amara replied. He's just another uniform who thinks a badge rewrites the law. Navarro hesitated. This checkpoint program, Ellison's project, every Eastbrook arrest looks the same. Obstruction, resistance, no cause. I've tried to report it. My files disappear. Amara studied her. And you still work here? Someone has to, Navarro said. At least I can document what's left. Amara gave a small nod. Keep doing that. The door opened again. Dalton returned, smug. Our guest has drawn attention. Counselor Ellison's here to meet her. Navarro frowned. Now? Dalton ignored her. Counselor Marcus Ellison entered, wearing a tailored Navy suit and a politician's smile. Miss Cole, he said warmly. I hear you refused a lawful search? I refused an unlawful one, Amara answered. Ellison chuckled. You Eastbrook folks always think the rules don't apply. The Corridor Safety Initiative keeps this city clean. Clean for whom? Amara asked. Ellison's eyes narrowed. You people should be grateful someone's keeping order. Order without justice is tyranny, she said. Dalton stepped forward. Enough philosophy. Cell 2's ready. Ellison waved a hand. Keep her quiet until morning. The governor's office doesn't need headlines. As they led her out, Navarro's gaze met Amara's, unspoken understanding between two women standing on opposite sides of the same truth. Inside her cell, Amara sat on the cold bench, breathing slow. Her pulse matched the ticking clock. The pain in her wrists reminded her why she was there. She wasn't just collecting evidence. She was provoking exposure. The city thought it held her captive. It didn't realize she was already in control. 43 minutes, she reminded herself. Justice was on schedule. The rain had stopped, leaving the harbor precinct washed clean, but tense. Inside, the air crackled with quiet unease. Phones rang, boots echoed on linoleum, and somewhere deep in the building, a fax machine groaned like it didn't want to deliver bad news. Amara Cole sat alone in her holding cell, counting seconds. Her watch vibrated once, an encoded signal confirming receipt of her transmission. 43 minutes until oversight arrived. Outside, Lieutenant Dalton was pacing. "She's not who she says she is," he muttered. "She's just another Eastbrook agitator." Detective Elena Navarro stood near the front desk, watching as the sergeant on duty answered a call. His voice shifted from boredom to alarm. "You said what department?" His eyes darted toward Dalton. "Sir, we're getting inquiries from Washington. Someone's asking for a detainee named Amara Cole." Dalton frowned. "From where exactly?" "Defense Oversight Division," the sergeant said quietly. "And the Department of Justice." For the first time that night, Dalton hesitated. Probably a prank. Navarro stepped closer. "Defense Oversight doesn't prank, Lieutenant. You might want to start reading those Miranda rights correctly." Before he could respond, the phone rang again. Different line, same urgency. The sergeant picked up. "Yes, sir. Harbor Precinct. She's still here." He swallowed hard. "They say they're confirming her credentials." Dalton's voice rose. "Credentials? She's nobody." Navarro folded her arms. "You sure about that?" Dalton turned on her. "You think she's special?" "She's playing you." "Maybe," Navarro said evenly. "Or maybe you just arrested someone you shouldn't have touched." Down the hall, Counselor Marcus Ellison appeared, trailed by his assistant. His suit was perfect, his confidence restored. "Lieutenant," he said smoothly, "I trust everything is under control." Dalton nodded stiffly. "Yes, sir. She's being processed." "Probably bluffing." Ellison lowered his voice. "Keep her name out of reports. This checkpoint controversy doesn't need more noise. The governor's office already has questions." Navarro caught the words. "Questions or complaints?" Ellison turned, eyes cold. "Detective, unless I'm mistaken, you report to the lieutenant, not to me." "I report to the law," Navarro replied. Ellison smirked. "That's adorable. File that quote somewhere safe." Amara sat in her cell, listening to faint echoes through the corridor. Each sound painted a picture, footsteps accelerating, voices lowering. Fear was beginning to seep into the cracks. She pressed her thumb to the watch face. The data feed confirmed live connection. Her report, recordings, and visual logs were transmitting in real time to Washington. Back at the front desk, the phone rang a third time. The sergeant answered, then looked up, pale. "They're sending someone," he said quietly. "ETA 40 minutes. Dalton tried to steady himself. "Federal brass exaggerate. She'll be gone by then." Ellison snapped. "Then make it happen. The last thing we need is the Pentagon poking around." Navarro's eyes sharpened. "Pentagon?" The room went still. Dalton's radio crackled, interrupting the silence. "Lieutenant, there's a reporter outside asking about a woman arrested at the checkpoint. Says she got a video from a witness." Ellison's expression froze. No statements, no leaks. Dalton's voice cracked. "It's already out there." In her cell, Amara heard the sudden buzz of phones ringing in sequence. She smiled faintly. The network had activated. The system was now aware and watching. Dalton stormed down the corridor, stopped in front of her cell, gripping the bars. "Who are you?" he demanded. Amara met his stare calmly. "You'll know in 38 minutes." He stepped back, shaken by her certainty. Ellison's voice echoed from the hallway. "Get her moved before they arrive." Quietly. But Navarro was already dialing internal affairs, voice low and steady. "We have a situation at Harbor Precinct," she said. "Possible unlawful detention. Better get here fast." The sound of distant sirens began to build again, not local, deeper, heavier. The countdown had begun. Dawn crept over Stonebridge, pale light reflecting off the wet pavement outside Harbor Precinct. The night storm had passed, but tension clung to the building like fog. Inside, phones rang, printers jammed, and nervous officers pretended to be busy. The name Amara Cole had become a ghost, moving through every hallway. Unanswered calls from Washington made sure of that. At 7:30, 3 black SUVs rolled to a stop outside. Their tinted windows and silent precision told everyone they weren't local. "Lawyers," someone whispered. Lieutenant Dalton tried to sound confident. Probably some defense bureaucrats. The doors opened. A tall man in a military uniform stepped inside, flanked by 2 military police officers. "Colonel Patrick O'Neill, Department of Defense," he announced. "We're here regarding the unlawful detention of investigator Amara Cole." Silence fell over the precinct. Counselor Marcus Ellison descended the stairs, adjusting his tie. "Colonel, this must be a misunderstanding." Our officers acted. "Within no lawful authority," O'Neill interrupted. "By order of the Secretary of Defense, this precinct is now under federal review." He handed Dalton a letter embossed with the Pentagon seal. Dalton's mouth twitched. "You can't just walk in here and—" "I just did," O'Neill said. "If you interfere, you'll be charged with obstruction." Federal technicians streamed through the doors carrying sealed evidence kits and laptops. They began imaging servers, tagging files, and pulling footage from every camera in the building. Detective Elena Navarro stood near the entrance, silent but steady. O'Neill nodded to her. "You reported inconsistencies, Detective?" "Yes, sir," she said, and her watch recorded everything. Dalton froze. Her what? O'Neill turned to him. "A department-issued surveillance device. Every word spoken since the checkpoint has been transmitted to Washington." Ellison tried to recover his composure. "Colonel, you're overstepping. The Corridor Safety Initiative is a city program, approved by the governor." O'Neill's gaze was cold. "Then, your governor can explain why his program violates federal civil rights law." Reporters began gathering outside, their cameras flashing through the glass. Someone whispered, "The press is already here." Dalton spun toward Navarro. "Did you leak this?" "I called internal affairs," she said. "They must have done their job." Amara emerged from the hallway, flanked by 2 MPs. Her wrists were free now, her uniform visible beneath her civilian jacket. The precinct fell silent. Dalton's voice cracked. "What are you?" "Federal Investigator, Defense Oversight Division," she said calmly. O'Neill stepped forward. "Correction, General Cole, 4-star rank, active duty." The word general hit the room like thunder. Ellison's confident posture collapsed. "General," he repeated. Amara faced him evenly. "You judged me by my address, not my authority. Now you'll answer for both." "General," O'Neill said, "we've set up the conference room for evidence review." They entered the room. Screens flickered to life, displaying heat maps, arrest statistics, and internal memos. Red clusters bled across Eastbrook's borders. This Amara said, pointing to the data. Isn't policing. It's profiling. Dalton stammered. You can't ruin careers over a misunderstanding? Amara met his eyes. Justice doesn't ruin careers. Corruption does. O'Neill's radio crackled. Colonel, DOJ convoy 5 minutes out. Ellison tried to regain his smile. We can handle this quietly. General, the city doesn't need a spectacle. You already had your quiet, Amara said. Now it's time for the truth. Outside, sirens wailed again, low, steady, unmistakably federal. Inside Harbor Precinct, the storm had changed shape. It no longer came from the sky. It was standing in uniform, demanding answers. The conference room at Harbor Precinct had been stripped of its old authority. Files lay open across the table, computer screens glowed with maps and statistics, and the once confident officers now hovered at the edges, silent and sweating. The seal of the Department of Defense flickered on the main monitor. General Amara Cole stood at the head of the room, her presence calm, commanding, impossible to ignore. Begin the review, she said. Colonel Patrick O'Neill nodded to a technician who projected a heat map of Stonebridge. Red clusters pulsed across the screen, centered around Eastbrook, the poorest, blackest district in the city. Checkpoint density by neighborhood, O'Neill said. 92% of stops occur here. Dalton shifted in his chair. High crime area, Colonel. Statistics justify deployment. Amara turned toward him. Traffic data shows equal violation rates across districts. Yet arrests here are 7 times higher. Explain that. Dalton's mouth opened, closed, then stayed shut. O'Neill switched the slide. Body camera compliance logs. 48% of Eastbrook checkpoints show camera failure. Elsewhere in the city, only 4%. Convenient coincidence? Detective Elena Navarro leaned forward. We found code in the software. Body cams automatically deactivate inside the corridor safety zone. Someone wrote that feature in. All eyes turned to Dalton, his face drained of color. I just follow orders. Whose? Amara asked. Before he could speak, Counselor Marcus Ellison entered, flanked by a city attorney. His smile returned, brittle but practiced. General Cole, he said, let's not turn data into drama. The Corridor Initiative has saved lives. Whose lives? Amara asked quietly. Ellison ignored the question. We're dealing with an algorithm issue. Technology isn't perfect. Navarro's voice cut through the tension. This wasn't a glitch. It was policy. She slid a printed memo across the table. Dalton's signature beside Ellison's directive. Prioritize vehicles registered in Eastbrook. Focus stops for maximum deterrence. O'Neill looked at Ellison. That's not deterrence. That's discrimination. Ellison's jaw flexed. Context matters. We were under pressure to reduce crime. Amara's tone sharpened. By targeting an entire community? He spread his hands. You don't understand city politics, General. I understand constitutional rights, she replied. And you violated them. The room went still. Outside, camera flashes from reporters flickered through the blinds. A technician brought up a new file, emails between Ellison and a private developer. Reducing Eastbrook's population density improves property values. Amara read the line aloud. Profit built on profiling. Classic formula. Dalton buried his face in his hands. Navarro looked away. Ellison forced a laugh. General, you're cherry-picking phrases. No, she said. I'm identifying patterns. O'Neill turned to the officers along the wall. This investigation will extend to every participant in the Corridor Initiative. Cooperate now or face obstruction charges. A murmur spread through the room. One officer stepped forward nervously. "Ma'am, we were told the checkpoints were legal. Orders came from above." Amara nodded. "Then help us prove where above begins." The man exhaled, relieved. "I'll cooperate." Ellison glared at him. "You'll regret that." "No," Amara said firmly. "He'll be protected." The days of silence are over. O'Neill's radio crackled. "Federal prosecutors request preliminary files within the hour. Send everything," Amara ordered. "No redactions." As technicians copied drives, Ellison whispered to his lawyer, "If we spin this right, we can still frame it as reform." Amara heard him. "Reform doesn't erase accountability, counselor. It begins with it." The lawyer stood. "General, this meeting's over." "No," she said. "It's just begun." Outside, thunder rumbled faintly across Stonebridge. The storm had returned, this time on her side. Morning light crept through the half-closed blinds of the Harbor Precinct conference room, illuminating rows of documents tacked to the wall. Evidence files covered every surface, emails, payment records, and city directives, all pointing toward one man. The air felt heavy with the weight of revelation. General Amara Cole stood before the chaos, posture straight, voice steady, eyes cold with purpose. Colonel Patrick O'Neill read from a brief. "Baylight Holdings," he said. "The developer funding Ellison's campaign. They've been buying Eastbrook property for months." Amara crossed her arms. "And the corridor checkpoints forced residents out. Fear by design." Detective Elena Navarro entered, clutching a flash drive. Recovered internal chats from Dalton's terminal. Officers called Eastbrook the containment zone. They joked about racking up easy numbers. Lieutenant Dalton sat in the corner, badge on the table, face pale. "I didn't write those," he said quietly. "But you saw them," Amara replied, "and you let it stand." Dalton looked up, guilt heavy in his eyes. "We were told the numbers mattered more than context. The council wanted results." Amara turned toward the wall of data. "Results bought with human dignity aren't results. They're violations." Ellison's attorney, sweating under the bright lights, cleared his throat. "General Cole, with respect, you're turning administrative issues into a federal crusade. These were local policing errors, not systemic abuse." Amara pressed a key on the console. The speakers filled the room with Ellison's recorded voice. "Keep Eastbrook contained. We can't risk property values dropping on the North Bank side." Every officer froze. The truth echoed off the walls. Ellison stood at the back, trying to maintain his calm. "That statement is out of context." Amara faced him directly. "No, counselor. That statement is the context." O'Neill stepped forward, projecting a slide of bank transfers linking Ellison's campaign to Baylight Holdings. Public money redirected to private investors, classic pay for play. Dalton buried his head in his hands. We never knew how deep it went. Amara's voice softened, but carried weight. "You never asked. That's how injustice thrives, through comfort and silence." Outside the windows, camera flashes flared from the swarm of reporters gathered below. The story had already escaped containment. Navarro approached with another file. "General, you should see this. Medical reports from a detainee, Jordan Davis, 21. Arrested at a corridor checkpoint 2 months ago. No charges filed, but he left with broken ribs. His mother filed 5 complaints, all deleted from the system." Amara studied the photo of the bruised young man. "Forward it to the Department of Justice immediately." Ellison scoffed. "You're turning minor errors into moral theater." She looked at him. "You built an empire on the suffering of citizens you swore to protect." O'Neill's radio buzzed. "Colonel, DOJ units confirm approach. Warrant teams en route. Arrival in 8 minutes." Ellison's voice shook now. "You don't understand what this will do to Stone Bridge. You'll ruin everything. Our funding, our reputation." Amara cut him off. "Reputation built on corruption isn't worth saving." His attorney whispered, "Counselor, stop talking." Ellison ignored him. "You think exposing this makes you a savior?" Amara met his eyes. "It makes me accountable. Something you never were." Dalton finally spoke, voice rough. "What happens to us?" "You'll face justice," Amara said. "Fairly, publicly." Navarro exhaled. "You planned this from the start?" Amara nodded. "Injustice only shows its face when it thinks no one's watching. I gave it the chance." Outside, the wail of federal sirens rose like a promise. The walls vibrated faintly as black vehicles rolled to a stop. Amara turned to O'Neill. "Secure the building." He saluted sharply. "Yes, General." The storm was no longer coming. It had arrived, and it was wearing the uniform of truth. By midday, Harbor Precinct had transformed into a federal command center. Desks were cleared, cables ran across the floor, and monitors displayed live feeds from outside where reporters shouted questions through the rain. Inside the main hall, General Amara Cole stood at the podium facing Counselor Marcus Ellison, Lieutenant Dalton, and a group of city officials. The weight of exposure hung over everyone like fog that wouldn't lift. "Begin recording," Amara ordered. A DOJ technician nodded and switched on the microphone. Ellison smoothed his tie, forcing a smile for the cameras. "General Cole, this isn't necessary. The people of Stonebridge deserve reassurance, not spectacle." Amara's tone was sharp but controlled. "Transparency isn't spectacle, Counselor. It's accountability. You built a system that punished citizens for living in the wrong zip code." Ellison's grin faltered. "The Corridor Initiative was legal, approved by the City Council, backed by statistics." "Statistics designed to criminalize Eastbrook," she replied. "Checkpoints placed at every exit. Random stops targeting minorities. Body cameras deliberately deactivated. You called that safety." Detective Elena Navarro stepped forward with a folder. "And internal communications show quotas. Officers pushed to increase Eastbrook apprehensions." Dalton's face was gray. "We followed orders. None of us wanted this." "Yet you stayed silent," Amara said. "Silence is participation." Outside, thunder rolled and flashbulbs lit the windows. Reporters pressed against the glass, shouting questions about racial profiling and abuse of power. Ellison's lawyer whispered in his ear, but he brushed him off. "You think public humiliation fixes injustice?" he snapped. Amara held his gaze. "No, Counselor. Admitting truth does." Colonel Patrick O'Neill entered, handing her a document stamped with the DOJ seal. "General, the Attorney General has authorized a full federal audit of the Corridor Safety Initiative. All city funds frozen pending investigation." Ellison's color drained. "You can't do that? This will cripple public services." "It will stop corruption from hiding behind them," Amara said. Navarro looked to the officers standing along the wall. "For years you were told this was about safety. Look around you. Does this look like safety to anyone?" Several officers shifted uncomfortably, eyes lowering. One of them, Sergeant Reeves, spoke up. "We wanted to believe it was working. We thought we were helping." Amara nodded. "Help doesn't come from fear, Sergeant. It comes from fairness." O'Neill's voice cut through the murmurs. All personnel involved in the corridor program are required to surrender devices and records for review. Failure to comply will result in obstruction charges. The room filled with uneasy movement, phones set down, keys tossed onto tables, the sound of defeat. Ellison slammed a fist on the table. "You're destroying everything I built." Amara didn't flinch. "Everything you built was already broken. I'm just showing the world the cracks." Dalton looked up, weary but resigned. "General, what happens next?" "Justice," she said simply. "Not revenge, not politics, justice." Navarro handed Amara a copy of a new proposal. "General, the community is requesting an oversight board, civilian-led, transparent, independent." Amara took the document, scanning it quickly. "Then that's where we begin." Outside, the storm intensified, lightning flashing across the sky. The sound echoed through the glass like applause from a city awakening. Ellison muttered, "You'll regret this." Amara turned toward him. "Regret belongs to those who never act." "I did." She faced the cameras, voice steady, every word measured. "Effective immediately. The Corridor Safety Initiative is suspended. All related data will be made public. Stonebridge deserves policing rooted in equality, not fear." Navarro exhaled, whispering, "It's over." Amara shook her head slightly. "No, Detective. It's beginning." The room fell silent as the storm raged outside, a cleansing, necessary noise. A week later, Stonebridge awoke beneath a curtain of gray rain. The courthouse steps gleamed slick as steel, flanked by rows of cameras and reporters shouting questions into the wind. Inside, the grand jury room was silent, except for the rustle of papers and the rhythmic hum of rain against the glass. At the center of it all stood General Amara Cole, her uniform crisp, her expression carved in calm resolve. She faced the jurors. "The Corridor Safety Initiative was never about safety," she said, voice clear and measured. "It was about control, targeting Eastbrook residents under false pretense. Evidence shows checkpoints were placed intentionally to maximize arrests and manipulate city data." A juror asked, "Was this sanctioned by city officials?" "Yes," Amara answered. "Counselor Marcus Ellison ordered these actions using law enforcement to serve private interests." Lieutenant Dalton and others complied. The result? Systemic discrimination hidden behind bureaucracy. Colonel Patrick O'Neill dimmed the lights and activated a projection. A map glowed red with dots marking each arrest. 93% of these stops occurred in Eastbrook, he said. 0 checkpoints were placed in North Bank, despite equal traffic violations. This was design, not coincidence. Detective Elena Navarro testified next, calm but resolute. "When I questioned these patterns, my reports vanished. I was reassigned to clerical duty. I filed complaints. None were answered." Ellison leaned toward his lawyer, muttering, "She's grandstanding." The prosecutor rose. "No, counselor. She's describing obstruction." Dalton was called to the stand, shoulders bowed. "We thought we were preventing crime," he said quietly. "We were told Eastbrook drivers were high risk." I didn't question it. Amara met his eyes. "Not questioning injustice makes you complicit in it." O'Neill pressed a button. The next slide showed financial ledgers, campaign donations from Baylight Holdings routed to Ellison's account. "The same developer purchasing Eastbrook homes," O'Neill said. "When residents left, profits rose." Then came the recording. Ellison's voice filled the room. "Move the checkpoints closer to Eastbrook. Less noise, better numbers." The courtroom froze. "That's fabricated," Ellison shouted, standing abruptly. Amara replied evenly, "It's authenticated. Your words, counselor." The judge struck his gavel. Order! The prosecutor faced the jury. This wasn't poor judgment, it was systemic exploitation. Citizens turned into statistics for political gain. Amara stepped forward. Those citizens trusted their leaders. Today, we restore that trust through truth. The Constitution doesn't bend for convenience. It stands for all. The jury foreperson stood, voice trembling slightly. The grand jury finds sufficient cause for indictment, civil rights violations, abuse of power, and obstruction of justice. A gasp rippled through the room. Ellison sank into his chair, pale and wordless. Dalton closed his eyes. Navarro exhaled, tears bright but contained. Outside, the storm had softened into a mist. Reporters surged as Amara, O'Neill, and Navarro stepped through the courthouse doors. "General Cole!" one shouted. "Does this decision repair public trust?" Amara paused on the steps. The city reflected in the wet marble below. "Trust isn't restored by verdicts, it's earned by accountability," she said. "Today, Stonebridge begins again." Navarro added, "Every checkpoint record will be made public. Transparency is no longer optional." O'Neill nodded beside her. "The Department of Justice will ensure full oversight." "No more secrets," a reporter called. "And Counselor Ellison?" Amara's eyes met the crowd. "He'll stand trial in the same system he corrupted. That's the definition of justice." As thunder rolled far over the harbor, Amara looked skyward. The city's storm had finally broken, cleansing, relentless, and long overdue. The hearing chamber of the North Cascadia Capitol buzzed with restrained energy. Cameras flashed, pens scratched, and aides whispered along the back walls. A banner above the dais read, "Committee on Civil Rights Oversight." At the center table sat General Amara Cole in full uniform, 4 stars gleaming beneath the bright lights. It had been 3 weeks since Counselor Ellison's indictment, but the shockwaves still rippled through every level of government. The chairwoman, Senator Grace Whitmore, adjusted her glasses. "General Cole," she began, "thank you for appearing. The people of this state want answers. How did a city-run safety program devolve into systemic abuse?" Amara's voice carried steady authority. "Because oversight was replaced with ambition, Senator. When political gain outweighs constitutional duty, justice becomes selective. Stonebridge is a symptom, not an anomaly." The room fell silent. Every reporter leaned forward. Whitmore nodded. "You allege similar programs exist statewide?" "Yes, ma'am," Amara replied. "Our analysis found comparable checkpoint systems in 8 jurisdictions. Same funding structure, same racial disparities, same lack of accountability." Colonel Patrick O'Neill, seated behind her, distributed copies of the report. Charts displayed striking parallels. Minority neighborhoods overrepresented, camera failures clustered around identical boundaries. A young senator frowned. "Are you suggesting these departments colluded?" "Not formally," Amara said, "but they operated under the same incentives: property development, campaign contributions, and manipulated crime metrics. When profit drives policing, equality dies quietly." Detective Elena Navarro, now part of Amara's task force, took the microphone. "We've spent weeks auditing archived footage. Body cams were programmed to deactivate automatically inside certain districts. Someone coded that feature deliberately." Gasps rippled through the chamber. Senator Whitmore asked, "Who authorized that?" Navarro looked toward the data screen. "The pattern traces back to a single vendor, Central Logic Technologies, the same contractor used by Stonebridge." Murmurs spread like wildfire. One senator whispered, "That company donated to half this committee." Amara's tone cut through the noise. Corruption doesn't need conspiracies, it thrives in complacency. Whitmore leaned forward. What reforms do you propose? Amara unfolded a small folder labeled the Equal Enforcement Framework. 3 measures, she said. 1. Mandatory federal oversight for all checkpoint programs. 2. Public data dashboards tracking every stop by race, age, and location. 3. Criminal liability for officials who alter or conceal enforcement data. A senator from the opposition party crossed his arms. General, that's overreach. Federal intrusion into local policing won't sit well with voters. Amara met his gaze. Neither did segregation, sir. Yet we corrected that too. The chamber erupted in quiet applause from the audience. Colonel O'Neill rose. The Defense Oversight Division stands ready to assist any department that volunteers for reform, but transparency will be mandatory, not negotiable. Senator Whitmore tapped her pen thoughtfully. We'll draft a bill reflecting those principles. Perhaps call it the Equitable Enforcement Act. Navarro nodded. Stonebridge showed what happens when data hides discrimination. This act can make sure that never happens again. Reporters scribbled the title instantly. Equitable Enforcement Act, a phrase destined for headlines by morning. Whitmore turned to Amara. General, one final question. After everything you've uncovered, what gives you hope that real reform will follow? Amara paused, letting the room breathe. Because truth is contagious, Senator. Once exposed, it spreads faster than fear. Applause filled the chamber, rolling like thunder beneath the dome. Even those who once doubted her now stood, some reluctantly, others with conviction. As the session adjourned, Amara stepped into the marble hallway. Navarro caught up beside her. You think they'll pass it? Amara smiled faintly. They'll have no choice. The public won't let this fade. Outside, sunlight broke through the rain clouds, spilling gold across the Capitol steps. The storm had passed, but its echo had become law. 2 months later, the Eastbrook Community Center overflowed with people. The storm that once divided Stonebridge had become something else: momentum. News cameras lined the back wall, capturing what the city was calling the Reformation Assembly. General Amara Cole stood quietly near the stage, now in civilian clothes, watching as children chased one another across the polished floor where officers and residents once faced each other with suspicion. The new police chief, Captain Leora Hayes, addressed the crowd. For too long, Eastbrook was treated like a problem to control instead of a community to protect, she said. Starting today, that ends. Every officer will wear active body cameras at all times. Every stop, every checkpoint will be logged and shared publicly. No more shadows. Applause erupted. Beside her, Detective Elena Navarro, now director of the city's Civil Rights Task Force, smiled. Transparency isn't punishment, she added. It's trust rebuilt. Amara stepped forward as the crowd quieted. What happened in this city wasn't just about one program, she said, voice clear, grounded. It was about forgetting what justice truly means. Justice isn't a badge. It isn't a courtroom. It's a promise to treat every person with equal dignity. People rose to their feet, cheering. But Amara didn't linger in applause. She never had. She walked toward the back of the room, where an older woman waited, Marcia Davis, mother of Jordan Davis, the young man whose injuries had helped spark the investigation. Marcia took her hands. They cleared my boy's record last week, she said softly. He's starting classes again. He wants to study law. Amara smiled. That's the best outcome we could have hoped for. He said to thank you, Marcia whispered. Said you made him believe the system could change. Amara's eyes warmed. I didn't change it, ma'am. People like your son will. Outside, reporters waited on the steps. Navarro joined her, handing over a folder stamped with the federal seal. The Equitable Enforcement Act passed last night, she said. Unanimous vote. It's official. Amara exhaled slowly. Then Stonebridge wasn't just a story, it became a standard. Navarro grinned. You'll be back in D.C. soon. Oversight Division wants you to brief the Joint Task Force. Already planning to, Amara said. But first I promised myself one more visit. She and Navarro walked through Eastbrook together. The neighborhood looked different now. Murals freshly painted, markets reopening, laughter spilling from doorways instead of fear. On the corner where the old checkpoint once stood, construction crews were erecting a memorial. A bronze plaque read, Equal protection begins here. Navarro paused. Hard to believe it's the same street. It's not, Amara said quietly. It's what it was always meant to be. A car pulled up, a sleek federal sedan. Colonel Patrick O'Neill stepped out, salute crisp even in civilian clothes. General, the Pentagon sends congratulations. They say you've set the model for every reform unit nationwide. Tell them we're just getting started, Amara replied. He nodded. Bennett and Ellison were sentenced this morning. 5 years federal, restitution to all checkpoint victims. Justice served, Amara said. O'Neill smiled. Justice enforced. As the colonel departed, Navarro looked toward the horizon. What happens now? Amara's gaze followed hers. Now we watch, we document, we stay loud. Change isn't permanent unless someone keeps the light on. She turned toward the community center one last time. Through the windows, she saw children drawing chalk lines on the floor, marking boundaries, erasing them, laughing as they crossed. That sight stayed with her as she walked toward the car. Later, from her Pentagon office, she would review data from cities across the country, red zones fading, green circles of reform spreading. Yet here, on this quiet Eastbrook street, she felt the truth more deeply than any chart could show. Equality wasn't theory anymore. It was alive.